I wrote and recorded my first 2 songs, and it was like my world lit up, and there was no turning back.
In 1995, a 12-year-old with a diary in Snow Hill, North Carolina, had an idea. Marlena Evans adopted the name Rapsody and combined a need for self-expression with a love for hip-hop music to become one of the most respected MCs in rap. After nearly a decade spent in the trenches of hip-hop's underground, Rapsody broke out with a guest appearance on Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly and seized upon the opportunity, following up the spotlight moment with her Grammy-nominated opus, Laila's Wisdom. She continues to up the ante creatively with each project, promising her forthcoming 2023 album will be her most revealed work to date. And it all started with one idea. How did your parents' professional life inform your career ambitions?
My mom and dad, they were both, factory workers. My dad was a mechanic at DuPont, and my mom, she would paint china on plates at a company called Lennox. The thing I learned from them is that anything you want in life, you have to work for and work hard for. We didn't have everything or the best everything, but I didn't go without either. So, I was always comfortable, but one thing I always saw them do was work hard.
You're the 4th of 5 siblings, correct?
Yes.
How do you feel like that dynamic shaped your experience and your outlook on the world?
Growing up, with siblings, you learn how to just fit in everything. Like even in rap, I think that's part of maybe where my humility comes from, where it's like, I don't need to boast out here that I'm the best. Like, it's cool. Like, I know how to share the space. I'm used to sharing the space. I'm one of 5. That shaped my outlook on the world. I was the last girl of the family. Everybody around my age were boys. I was a tomboy, but my mom would only let me hang out with the boys so much. So, I spent a lot of time by myself. That's probably where the love for like reading and writing and being creative came from. You kind of have to entertain yourself and sit in your own thoughts.
Was there anybody in your family or sort of immediate circle that worked in a creative field?
No, and I think that's one reason why I felt like I got started late. I always knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to do music from a young age, but I didn't have any example of that. Nobody was performing in Snow Hill. I didn't go to my first concert till I was in middle school, and I had to drive an hour to do that. And I didn't go to my first local shows to college. So, those things made me feel like it wasn't possible. I don't even know how to start. And even expressing your dreams, like, I would never tell people, my family, what I wanted to do in real life, because I was like, they were like, what? Why you want to rap? You can't rap. Like, who taught you how to rap? How you gonna make money off rap? Like, I don't know either. I don't even know how to explain that to you. So it was just something that I always kept tucked inside until I got around the right people that helped to bring it out. The most important idea I've had is to think that it's possible. Anything that you set out to do, you can accomplish. Whatever fuels us, whatever comes to our imagination, to think that I can do it.
What was it about the nature of rap music in particular that was so captivating?
Let's say MC Lyte, for example, to be a young girl, but to see this woman in New York and she's got the hat on, cocked to the side and the baggy pants, and I'm just like, yo, that's fly. And it gave you a space just to be and just to create with whatever. That's how I looked at it. The storytelling, the creativity, like, what you can do with words. I just thought it was just all so cool, and it was so different from what I was experiencing in Snow Hill. I look outside of my window growing up, and it's a tobacco field and woods, and it's super quiet. and to turn on the TV and see these crews on the block and, you know, how they wear their clothes and the shoes are not tied up. And I'm like, oh, I like how that fits, you know. It was just something that I was so connected to, and individuality and the creativity, and it just like taking something and shaping it to how you want to shape it.
When did you start expressing yourself through music and realizing that you had these feelings and these things that you wanted to articulate in that way?
It started in middle school. Like, I grew up in, you know, I would say the typical home, you know, where you have a baby boomer parent. They grew up where you do what I say, like don't question anything. And there wasn't necessarily room to communicate your thoughts, your feelings, you know. So if I wanted to express something to my mom, I would write it in a letter. Or, you know, if I wanted to express myself, I got what we call a journal, of course, a diary. And, you know, I would write poems. Because, you know, I didn't grow up in a home where I felt comfortable enough, like, oh, I like this boy, let me talk to you about it. Or I feel this way about this, you know. So I held everything inside, but it had to come out, right? Because you weren't gonna buck up at your parents, so you had to let the energy out some way.
At what point did that start to transition into a more lyrical direction?
Just starting with the diary, allowing yourself to see your thoughts written out. That's the beginning, right? The next phase of that was going from poetry to spoken word. So I went to college and I started watching Def Poetry Jam, you know, Russell Simmons and Mos Def, and I was like, yo, this is ill, right? So while I was in college, just getting around people that, you know, were break dancers, rappers, and they were like, you know, what you do? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna do the spoken word piece. Then, you know, getting comfortable in a musical setting, those friends that I was with, you know, that were performing and, you know, that had started this club with me and we were hosting rap battles. They went to the studio one day and they said, we were gonna do a mixtape, right? And I would just go hang out and observe, knowing that I wanted to be a part of it. And my best friend at the time, whose name is Charlie Smarts, he sat down beside me and he was like, I know you be writing raps, you know, by yourself. Like, won't you stop being scared and just get in the booth? Like, nobody's gonna judge you. We'll help you. I wrote and recorded my first 2 songs, and it was like my world lit up. And there was no turning back. Like, I started skipping class. I would drive to school and just park and get ready to go into class, but I would start writing in the car. That started like around the summer 2005. Success to me is anything that brings you joy and makes you feel complete and is purposeful to you. Everybody's gonna define that differently. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, what's gonna fulfill me?
In that period that you are starting to create and you're making these first songs, it's a period in hip hop where there's very limited bandwidth in terms of success. What were you looking at in terms of your path? What was your plan around sustaining yourself?
I wanted the platinum plaques, I wanted the radio hits, right? But I wanted them how I knew them when I grew up, you know, watching Lauryn Hill get all those Grammys, seeing Queen Latifah's success, you know, with UNITY. There was still this belief in me like, nah, there's still space for this. Somebody has to want this, you know, somebody has to fill this space. And I think I just never let go of that idea that it was possible. I was also mentally prepared because of Ninth Wonder and Guru. They prepared me and like, yo, the path that you want to take in this day and time, for you to even break ground, it's gonna take you 7 to 10 years. I remember he telling me that and I was like, shit, I'm gonna be how old? You know, like, whew. But it's like, all right, let's go.
How did you sustain yourself during those first, 5 years?
I sacrificed, you know, at a time when I was in college and a lot of people were going to spring break and you're going to parties and all this. I would go to work, I would get off work and go to the studio. every single day, every fucking day. There was even a point where I got sick and I got diagnosed with Graves' disease, and I took some time off work, but I did not take time off music, and I was staying with my sister at the time. She was like, if you go to the studio, you could go to work. And she kicked me out, and I was just so broke. And I think it was, when my mom really understood like where my heart was. My mom came in one night and she said, I see what you want to do. She was like, I believe in you and I'm going to help you. My parents weren't the richest, but they work hard and they made great decisions with their money. So this was a time I didn't have anywhere to stay when I went to Raleigh, so I would sleep in the studio a lot. They found like a foreclosed home and they got me a nice little home. And that's just how I got through. But, figuring it out, getting family support, leaning on friends, like you realize it really takes a village. When it comes to doubt, I'm human, so I definitely do doubt myself. But I think the important thing that comes with doubt is awareness. I can say, okay, you're feeling this way, now why do you feel this way? One thing I've learned, especially in these last 2 years, is that you're always in charge of the experience that you want to have in this world. You get to decide, I'm gonna feel good today. I choose not to let this bother me.
In the middle of this, you are dealt this incredible curveball of Graves' disease, which is physically debilitating and also, impacts how you look, which as you are developing yourself as an artist and as a brand is, I imagine, very challenging to cope with emotionally, mentally. How did you wrap your head around that and reconcile your own feelings?
The hardest thing I think with that was the challenge of the physical appearance. Because we live in a space where it's only 10% about the music. People have to see you first before they hear you. And then you get in this space and my physical changes, right? I go from, before I got diagnosed with Graves' disease, I was hyperactive. So I didn't even know what was going on, but I lost mad weight. Like I got down to like 105, 110, and then my eyes, they had bulged so much, they was coming out of my head, and I had this big goiter. And then, you go through the treatments, and the treatments take you from hyper to hypo, right? And I'm a super energetic person, but now I'm like trying to figure out how to level out, and I don't have the energy anymore. Now I'm gaining weight crazy, my metabolism's so low, and it's just like, yo, I look crazy, right? And then you couple that with the internet, which is not a kind place, and especially to be a woman in hip hop, you got all these things thrown at you. That took a real toll on my self-confidence and how I saw myself. A lot of days I cried, a lot of days it's just like, damn. But I just come from a family that they don't let you do that. So I might have my moment, but I'ma always bounce back on some fuck it. It just is what it is. And so I poured everything into the music because one thing Knife always told me is people cannot deny good music.
What are the qualities about yourself that you hold on to the most tightly?
My heart and my humility. Just to approach everybody with love. And that's something I never ever want to lose about myself, is always approaching people and seeing the good in them. And humility, no ego. So yeah, those are the things that keep me grounded, that bring me peace, that keep good people around me.
Were there moments that your confidence was shaken? Did you think about pivoting or doing something different at any point?
Never. Like, I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in the 90s, and 90s have a huge influence on me. And one thing I never liked, and what I respected about this 90s, they didn't want about that biting shit. It was all about being an individual. So even if I saw people, being successful at doing this and other people having cookie cutter versions of it, I never really respected that. It was always me trying to figure out like, yo, what's wrong with people? Like when did we become sheep? Why is there no room for balance? You telling me everybody want this? Like, y'all not bored with the same narrative? Is this all women can look like in hip hop? That's not the culture that I know.
Struggling with an unexpected health crisis and a mainstream music industry unable to fully grasp her talents, Rapsody nonetheless continued to hone her craft. She stayed in the studio and created a series of renowned mixtapes that culminated in her critically acclaimed debut in 2012. This dedication paid off a couple years later in the form of a high-profile guest appearance that would set the stage for her Grammy-nominated sophomore album, Laila's Wisdom.
Rap is, on the one hand, about self-expression and personal revelation. On the other hand, it is a pugilistic, competitive sport.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, as a very humble and thoughtful person, balance those two elements?
Anything I'm good at, I'm competitive. When it came to basketball, I was a dog. Like, I would come up and hit the floor. I was talking smack. Rap humbled me. Like, this is one thing, like, it don't come as fast and as natural. But at the same time, I still had that competitive spirit, and I still wanted to be one of the best and compete with the best. I'm happy that it didn't come easy to me because it allowed me to have the humility, but at the same time, I am a natural competitor. Thinking about the era that I came up in, I came up with some dogs like Kendrick, Lamar, Ab-Soul, Nipsey, J. Cole, Freddie Gibbs, Big Crit. Like, these are my peers. So it's like, yo, what you gonna do? You wanna be the best. This is your competition right here. How you showing up? And two, I grew up with boys. So the fact that they were boys didn't scare me. I knew how to rock with boys. I played ball with boys. We would get out of the girls' practice and I would stay in practice with the varsity boys. So I was already conditioned to be like, I don't care what gender you are. It don't mean nothing to me. It was the same thing in rap. The boys respected me, but they also helped me get better too. I don't believe in writer's block. To me, it's your mind telling you need to go be inspired by something. Whether it's, you spend a day with friends, you take a trip, you watch a movie. It's just time to go step out and live a little bit and then come back.
Tell me about your process of evolution. You talked about Ninth challenging you and pushing you. What were the inflection points where you're sort of unlocking your own personal style?
I'm laughing because it came in spurts, right? And when you said Ninth challenge you, I just remember Murs coming down to record and he would watch me record and he'd look at Ninth, he was like, bro, why are you so hard on her? Like, it could be an ad lib or whatever. He made me do it 20 times till I got it right. Ninth knew I had to be tough to make it. But it always came in spurts. It was never consistent. And I would always kind of revert back to, what was comfortable for me. And I think, even part of that came from feeling like, you gotta be the best. You gotta be so intricate and the cadence gotta be crazy. And it's just like, yo, relax, bro. Like, relax. You don't have to have this super crazy cadence and these super deep metaphors. Like, being ill is a lot broader than what you think. I process criticism in a few ways. I like to sit with the criticism and ask myself, where is it coming from? I take it and I think about it and I'm like, okay, how can I grow from this situation? How can I learn from this criticism?
What year did you feel like you were really a player in the space?
I can say To Pimp a Butterfly opened the door. I felt like I was never in a place for people to even hear me, to even be able to form an opinion of what they felt. So Kendrick put me on that album, allowed for there to be a light on me, for people to be like, oh, okay, who is this? She's on Kendrick's album, his sophomore album, one of the most anticipated albums to ever come out. Let me stop and give her my ear, right? So
This is after a decade of
a decade
making music.
Yeah. When Kendrick first came to the studio, I want to say it was like 2011, I was there. We didn't even talk about music. We joked, told stories, went to cookout and got food. Just being there and beginning the relationship, that set me up to be in that position. And sometimes I do this a lot. I sit and I stop, and I'm like, damn, if he didn't give you that opportunity, where would you be now?
You get this look onto Pimp a Butterfly, and your life changes essentially overnight. The opportunities that are being, afforded you are wildly different. And there's a new level of sort of scrutiny and expectation. Going into Laila's Wisdom, how did that change your thinking about what you wanted to achieve artistically and your process?
Under Knife's guidance, he never let me get too in my head about expectations in that way. Even when Kendrick hit me to do the verse, I didn't hear what he did on the project. All he sent me was the instrumental. So I could have really gotten in my head about that. And Knife always reminded me is he hit you to do you. So just do you. Don't overthink it. And so when I'm going into Laila's Wisdom, you approach it the same way. Just do you. Don't overthink it. My biggest advantage as a creator is being myself. So I'm always gonna bring my unique perspective. Nobody else can be you. I think that's your greatest superpower.
So whether we're talking about Laila's Wisdom or Eve, both projects are fairly high concept. What is the process from sitting down to write song number one to this high concept coming into focus?
Every album has been different. Laila's Wisdom, I worked on that one about 1.5 years, 2 years. I recorded maybe 80, 90 songs for that. I was just getting in the studio and just making songs, right? With no real clear-cut direction or anything. It was just like, what do I want to talk about? How do I feel? And then, Knife comes in and we go through songs and it's like these collections of songs sound good together. And then it was like, what's the concept and what's the title? I did those last. I'm like, yo, how am I gonna make this make sense, right? To me, I felt like that album at that time was just about wisdom and giving people their flowers, right? And I was like, yeah, that's what my grandmother always told me. We'll just name it after her and boom, we'll figure out how to make it connect or whatever. Versus Eve, I came in and I did an interview that inspired me about the lineage, from Nina Simone to Roberta Flack to myself in North Carolina.
North Carolina artist.
Yeah, that's how it started. And I go home and I'm just got a beat and how does the beat make me feel? And I've always had this concept for about 4 or 5 years. I want to do a song about being a tomboy. It was even self-reflection of how people looked at me, the way I dress. She's a tomboy. We think we know your sexual orientation, like all these judgments based on just me being a tomboy, right? And it was just like, man, Aaliyah she was a tomboy, but she was still sexy. I've always had this concept and I just got the beat and I wrote it and I'm like, oh, what if I do a whole conceptual album? I like Felicia, I like Queen Latifah, I like Lauren, I like Maxine Waters, so I'm writing a list of women down. I'm like, okay, what do they represent for me in my life? So now that album is done completely different. My ultimate creative goal, I think, is just to inspire, to be an example for someone else. Listen to my music, watch my video, read something I wrote, and I hope it plants a seed for you or is a light that helps to guide you on your own journey.
The To Pimp a Butterfly moment was an enormous moment of inflection. Another huge moment was being nominated for the Grammy for Rap Album of the Year. As, an artist who is critically acclaimed and lauded for their art, but not necessarily, sitting center stage, how does a moment like that, how is that transformative for your professional life?
That was a huge moment. of acknowledgement. There's something in being acknowledged for all the sacrifices and the hard work that you've made, and to be able to stand beside your peers and, you know, the legends that inspired you, that lets you know, like, you do belong here. That moment was bittersweet for me personally. Grammys is the height of music that you could be acknowledged as. To be acknowledged on that stage is like, oh shit. But growing up, that was never on my list of things, right? You know, I was a young black girl, and I looked up, I really loved my blackness, so I looked up to the BETs and the Source Awards and the NAACP Awards, and it's like, those were my Grammys, right? And at that time, before the Grammy nominations, I'd never been nominated for any of those, so it was like, damn, right? Because the music I made, I appreciate everybody that listens to it, but I'm speaking specifically to, you know, someone that might be feeling like I feel, that looks like me. I really want to connect with my people. Like, what's the disconnect that I'm having here? Especially with women. Like, I always thought women would be my biggest fan base, like black women, but they're not. It's black men are my biggest fan base, or men in general. And so I always go back with like, man, that was never like, yo, what's wrong with you? That's always a self-reflection. Like, what am I doing? Like, what's the disconnect for me? And so, you know, at that moment, it was like, damn, we at the height of music, but am I connected with my people?
Refusing to compromise her fiercely independent artistic vision, Rapsody continues to maintain a laser-like focus on her craft. As she approaches her 15th year as a signed artist, Rapsody is digging deeper than ever to unearth her most candid and most vulnerable body of work to date.
You are now 15 years into your career. The wear and tear on your mind and heart and
I'm feeling it
knees and everything else. How do you think about work-life balance, given how consequential the level of grind was to your sort of elevation and ascension? Have your feelings about that changed, and how do you manage that?
I don't regret, you know, the time and the sacrifices that I did make. And I think that that balance is important, even in developing who you are as a person in your artistry. Like, I think balance is super important for your mind. I sit back sometimes and I'm just like, I'm glad I worked as hard as I did, but I do wish I had taken a little bit more time to kind of enjoy life, you know? These days I'm a lot more kind with myself and resting, taking a vacation, and trusting that you can afford to do that because you worked hard enough and you built enough solid foundation where you can give to yourself some too. I find myself like, okay, I'm gonna go out tonight. I'm not gonna record tonight. Yo, I'm gonna go on that date tonight, you know? And I've had a couple relationships the last few years, but yeah, and I feel like the music is better because of it. I have so much life that I've lived lately because I've allowed myself to have that balance, to live it, to experience things, to experience love, to experience heartbreak, joy, like all of it. This season of life is a lot more balanced. When I think about success, I hate to call anything luck, really. You make decisions, you make choices, and based on the decisions you make and the choices you make, you know, you find yourself in situations that allow you to reach a goal and be successful. It's all in how you react to whatever you're presented with or whatever experience that you have.
It's interesting to me that you would say that this is sort of a more revealed record, because I've never felt that your music was not revealed. So I guess my question is, what does that mean? Like, what is the layer that we have not been privy to as listeners?
I'm so guarded in a way. Like, I give a little bit of myself, but I usually hide it in a simile, a metaphor, or I might tell in a story format and necessarily not always shine a light on me. And I went to see No ID at some point while I was making this album, just playing him records, and you know, he was like, "We know you can rap, but what's after that?" He's like, I don't know who you are, right? So it's me diving in, like, this is who I am. These are the things that make me mad. This is what love looks like to me. This is insecurities that I have, like allowing myself to be naked and free and be human. Going through the path I've gone through, especially like when we go back to how people even reacted to my physical appearance and how harsh the internet could be like that. I'm like, I ain't telling y'all nothing, right? Y'all mean. But now it's just like, I'm just so okay and free because I've healed, or things that I haven't, I'm in the process of healing. So I'm okay just allowing myself to be, you know, and understanding like any judgment that comes from that, it's really not about me at the end of the day. It's a reflection of the person on the other end. And now I'm okay and comfortable in allowing you to see me. So that's what it is. Like, not necessarily who's Rapsody, who's Marlena, you know.
Was that challenging to unlock that part of yourself and to allow yourself to be revealed and sort of vulnerable in that way?
Yeah, even like being down to the final hours that I am now of this project, I have days where I wake up like, do you really want to put that song out? Like, you can still be vulnerable without telling all your business. And I always go back to like, my story is going to help somebody else be okay with it. This is part of your growth to be okay. So yeah, it's definitely hard to be naked in front of the world, especially a world that we live in where people don't even take the time to really sit with what you're saying and expressing and listen to you in a non-judgmental way. It's like everybody we gotta have an opinion about it and say it. So, you know, it's like, I don't know what's gonna come with this, but at the same time, I don't care, because I'm on to the next thing anyway. You know, if you're not uncomfortable, are you really healing or growing? And so it's like, it's okay, you can sit and be uncomfortable. Like, you're not gonna die from it. So yeah, it's challenging and it's scary, and you know, it shakes me up sometimes, but at the same time, I also get this thrill from it. Like, yo, I'm excited to just be okay. This is what it is. I'm not perfect, and neither are you.
Along your path, you know, you've talked extensively about the level of discipline and the volume of just sheer hours that you've put into this, and sacrificed an enormous portion of your life to making all of this art. And you are now talking about sort of sacrificing a wall between you and the audience that is sort of your most intimate, private moments. Do you get back what you put in to all of this when the dust settles?
I don't know. That's another thing. I'm okay with saying I don't know these days. I think if I look at it from what you do get back is a type of freedom, you know, and success in a way that, you know, you did something that was uncomfortable. You allowed yourself to grow and be evolving and trying to learn how to do more. The day that I feel like I've mastered it and all, it's just a breeze, I need to do something else, right? Like, all right, what's the challenge?